everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today, I honestly don't know what we're in store for. I had like a personal revelation, and it was one of those moments where I knew I couldn't write it down and take notes. I was just gonna have to say it out loud and basically work it out with all of you in real time. So what had happened is yesterday I was part of a sort of class, sort of discussion group with Raven Kaldera and Joshua Tenpenny, who you all might know because way back in the day we have reviewed a couple of their books. I believe we did Real Service, Power Circuits. There were a couple other ones as well. I really have loved their written work. They have so many amazing books about things like being a dominant with mental health issues, being a submissive with physical health issues and disability, and just really valuable conversations. And they don't typically do like in-person like conference classes. From what I can tell, they more tend to stay in their neck of the woods, which is the opposite side of the country for me. And I was so happy when I saw in FetLife that they were doing this discussion group, and I think they do them fairly regularly, and the subject of it was basically about navigating and negotiating power exchange relationships. And I'm someone where, even though I've been doing kinky stuff for 6 years, 7 years, how long at this point? I don't know. A while. I've been doing it for a while. Let's say that. I've taken a ton of classes, but even when something seems like it's kind of a basic thing, oh, you know how to negotiate. You shouldn't have to take that class. Well, I always like learning from other people, especially people that I really respect and I've admired their work in the past, because sometimes that gives you little nuggets of insight that you wouldn't have thought of on your own, and that's totally what happened here. So, by the way, always recommend taking even like basic classes, even as someone that is more advanced, even more experienced, because you are still going to oftentimes get something out of that. So anyways, just thought I would mention that because I am all about promoting education, as you all well know by this point. It was like a 2-hour long conversation, and they went over a bunch of different things, and I'm not going to give away all of it because that is their space in their class, and I don't want to like crib from their work. But the part that was important to me is there was kind of this ongoing conversation about like navigating what it is that you want from a DS relationship as the S-type person compared to the D-type person, and you each kind of coming into the negotiations with your own needs and wants and style preferences as a big part of that, right? And they started out kind of talking about, oh, well, some people from the outside may look at our relationship and see like a daddy-boy relationship, which is very much not our thing, and we don't want to use those labels. And somebody maybe wants to go into a relationship with a daddy-boy dynamic as what they want from DS. Other people are going to want master-slave or owner-property. And if you are mismatched in what your expectations are, that's not really going to work. But you can't just go off of what the labels as written are, because even within that, people are going to have their own opinions. So somebody could say, hey, this looks like a daddy-boy relationship, but what is meant by that can mean totally different things to two different people. It could be about nurturance and caregiving and age play, or it could be about like recreating this relationship that you had like growing up and sort of like taking ownership again over your trauma. Or it could be about having this like really cold and distant kind of like 1800s dad relationship where like you're the second son and you can never be good enough. Like, there's a whole spectrum of experiences there. So even if you both say, I want to have a daddy-boy relationship, you still have to have a conversation in detail about what that means, and negotiations shouldn't be rushed. And one aspect of this that they talked about was about service and control, because those are both different aspects that can go into submission, and different people have different feelings about them. And this was really in the context of how, so many ideas here, but it's also about like fantasy versus reality, and how you can have an idea be really, really hot in your head. And for a lot of people, especially S-types, they have this idea in their head, oftentimes from porn or erotica or things, where they think, never being able to have any choices at all, just being ordered around all the time, told to do completely arbitrary things, like that is what's hot for them. Having the total control, not having any free will, not having any autonomy at all, that's what they really want in fantasy. And then when they try it, maybe it's hot for a scene, maybe it's something they like kind of on a temporary basis, and then when that's every single day, every single interaction, then it starts to really grate and wear down their self-image, or they just don't like it and they get really annoyed. And that's a reality you have to confront. You can't only design kink relationships set in stone from fantasy. You have to have room for growth and change in that, and having those conversations where you do say, hey, we tried this. It was hot as a scene. It was hot as like texting role play. But in real life, I don't want you to order me to carry a box up and down the stairs over and over and over again for no productive reason other than entertaining you and basically being a performing monkey. And so that was really the control aspect. And then there's the service aspect, which is providing things to your partner. That could be organizing the house, running errands, keeping track of the bills, making sure the bed gets made, doing the deep cleaning and all the little nooks and crannies. And some people are really, really motivated to do that. Other people are like, if you so much as tell me what to dust, I'm not going to know how to do that because I would never do that for myself, and it is not appealing. They might be really into control, they might be really into sadomasochism, but service, cleaning, organizing, helping, doing things to be helpful, no, like that's not really what their thing is. And other people are really motivated to do it, and they wake up every day and they want to have that purpose that service gives them. They want to be able to do those kinds of things for their partner. But service and control are not synonymous. And a lot of people in their negotiations for power exchange treat one as going with the other, especially because a lot of people assume, like they also assume with punishment is going to be part of DS relationships, and that's another subject for a different video, but they assume that if you are having a DS relationship, that will involve, by its inherent qualities, a degree of providing service. And where that comes from and why it happens in the relationship is going to be different for different people. And so that has to be part of something that you talk about, because you can have service and have it not be something that is really centered around control. You can have control that is not centered around providing service. You can have control that is just for the sake of having control. Like if you are able to have authority over what is in your partner's bank account or what they buy at the grocery store, that's not them providing you a service. That's you having authority over their life. And so for someone that's getting into power exchange for service, having a relationship set up primarily around those kinds of things is not going to work for them. And for somebody that's really into control, having a relationship that is set up primarily around like getting their partner coffee in the morning and making the bed, like that might work for a while, but it's like, can you do more? I want to, like, can you do more with that? Maybe this is kind of working for me, but I like, I want to feel like I have less autonomy than just like making you coffee, And for me, what this really made me realize, like sitting honestly with myself about what my motivations are in kink, is that like I could imagine myself having a relationship with a high degree of control in it. I've never really considered myself like an MS person or anything, but I'd like to have a relationship that has a high degree of control and authority transfer or power exchange in it. But I think what I'm more motivated by is that service aspect. And what they talked about is how you can want to have service that has a high level of control within it, or have service that doesn't have as much control in it. And for me, in the way that I want to be in my relationships, having trust in me to do things right is really important. And so if I'm in a position where I'm being micromanaged, which could be seen as having a high level of control over the things I'm being told to do, I find that to be really grating. Now, if it's something that I'm not really experienced with, I don't really know anything about, I do need that reassurance and I do need to have direct instructions, but I don't want to be like stared at while I'm doing it. I don't want there to be like a checklist of like, when you load the dishwasher, number one is you load the cups, and then you load the lower rack with the pots and pans, and then you do this. Like, just let me load the fucking dishwasher. Like, I get why that can be appealing for people, but for me, that signals that my dominant, my master, my whoever the title would be, like, they don't really trust me to do the thing that they've told me to do, so they have to watch over me. And I think there's like some level of like childhood stuff going on there, and I think for a lot of people, the schemas that we take in about our relationships and our ideas about ourselves do play into our everyday vanilla relationships, and also definitely our kink ones, like the way that our parents acted. How did they, instruct us to do our homework? How did they, keep track of our chores around the house? Were they really super hands-off and had like no expectations at all? Did they micromanage us and make us sit at the kitchen table every night for 4 hours to study? Did we have a list of chores we had to do in order exactly the way they wanted them to do every single weekend? Like, what was going on there? Because that can really affect how you feel going into other relationships in adulthood. And though I don't want to say that like people who do BDSM are all traumatized, because that's not true, though a lot of us in life, though we may not know it or admit it to ourselves, do carry around some degree of trauma, whether that be severe to the point of having implications for mental health, or just being something that we processed and got over at some point in the past, whatever else. Again, not a psychologist, so just sort of spitballing here as I'm talking out loud, but those can play into the things that we want to have in our other relationships. And so for me, I realized having this conversation, that having that level of trust is really important, and it is really annoying to me. Alongside with that, not having my service be like thanked or appreciated. And what really, really grates at me are dominants and tops, and just D-types in general, actually like anybody, but especially people that want to have authority over me or access/control over my body. People that act in irresponsible ways, or what I perceive as being irresponsible. Because one of the things they talked about is having a relationship where one partner is very fastidious with money and they keep track of everything, and they have all their plans, and they have a big retirement account, and they're very, very conservative with money. If the other person is super flippant and goes on Amazon purchase sprees at 2 a.m. on a Thursday, and they want to live life and have fun with their money, and they have this mentality of like, well, I work to make money and I make money so I can have fun, so I'm going to have fun right now because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Those two personalities are really going to be in a lot of conflict if they have like a live-in communal like finances type relationship. And if it's the D type that has more of the flippancy with money, that can cause a scenario where the S type is always in distress about money and can really provoke some intense anxiety, because oftentimes for people that have a lot of, and again, I'm just sort of spitballing here, people that have a lot of anxiety around money, that could just be out of nowhere. It could be because they grew up in a very like financially insecure household. They had a young adulthood or childhood that had a lot of financial insecurity where every single penny mattered. And the thought of losing control over that and ending up, oh my God, if this happens, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And oh my God, we're going to end up on the street. And you have that catastrophizing happen. That's not an emotional thing you want to be having in your DS relationship. And this is something they talked about as well, and I keep saying that, but there was so much happening in this conversation. There's scenarios where you can navigate a DS relationship around these things and kind of know, okay, for now we can't really go here, and for now this is going to be a limit, and maybe in the future we'll talk about it, but some things are going to need to be addressed in therapy. They're going to need to be talked about either as a couple or individually if it's more of like a trauma, anxiety sort of a scenario. But knowing that's really important, because I think a lot of people would just assume that you would be able to like work that out and like, oh, well, if you're the S type, if you want to have that kind of control in your relationship, well, of course, just going to go with whatever your D type wants and what they think is best. And even if you both really want that, actually getting there can be really, really difficult. And you might not even know what anxieties, what traumas, what background issues you might be welling up to the surface when you're digging around in that, sludge in the bottom of your psyche and just, digging it all up and bringing it to the surface. That's what BDSM oftentimes does in a way that doesn't happen in vanilla relationships. You might run into some issues that you're not really necessarily aware that you might be asking for confrontation in if you bring that into your relationship. But getting back to the service and control thing, because that was really like my super big takeaway. And also, sorry if you guys can hear like birds chirping. I have a window open over there and they're having a conference or something. I don't know. They're having a time. But anyways, the service and control dichotomy. I think there's a glorification with S-types towards having a really high level of control in a relationship and really, really being like, oh, master, I will do whatever you want to me. Oh, you want to brand my tongue? Yeah, that seems like a fine idea. If only it would please you, master, I would cut out my own tongue for you. And like, again, things that can be hot in fantasy versus things that are possible in reality. And a lot of people like temporarily giving up a higher level of control, but need to have a higher level of control in their everyday lives in order to feel okay. And especially if you're rushing into a DS relationship, getting into a high level of control when you haven't proven that you deserve a high level of control yet. This goes back to the irresponsibility thing for me. That is where things get messy. Because like I said, I do want a relationship, like in theory in my head, where there is a high level of control. My sort of in the door motivation is more of the service thing and maybe some degradation stuff as well. There's a lot going on. BDSM's complicated. There's tons of motivations for stuff. But my in the door stuff that I want to do is like degradation, feeling lesser, and service things. But the actual giving up of control, that has to be fucking earned. And some people don't get that. They go on FetLife, they message people, they do whatever, and they're like, oh, master, please allow me to be a blank vessel for you to fill with whatever your desires are. And it's like, that is a great way to get yourself killed and or have your life savings drained and your life ruined. So do you really want to do and say that? And for me, I don't know if it's just because of like other relationships or just my own like fears and things, but I really struggle with the fear of having an irresponsible partner. Because, oh my God, if you're giving up that level of control to someone and then they decide, guess what? We're going to sell the house. We're going to get rid of our cars. We're going to move to Belize and completely, change your whole lifestyle. What? No. Like, or just people that in everyday life, I think for me, I really look at how dominants and even tops to some extent, how they order their everyday lives in terms of like, how much can they self-manage, right? Are they disciplined with their work? Do they have career motivations? How do they handle their money? Do they have a lot of debt? What's the reason for that debt? Because obviously, especially living in America, like if you have medical debt and student loan debt that you can't really help but having in this society, that's very different from like, oh yeah, I love to go gamble every single weekend and I always lose money at the casino, but I'm gonna make it back next time. That, for me personally, is a red flag. For other S-types, those kinds of things are not really going to be a problem, but I'm very much attuned to paying attention to like, okay, how's their lifestyle? Is their own house in order? How do they conduct themselves? How do they run their own life? Because how they run their own life, in a large extent, is going to be how they run my life. Because though there can be compromise in DS relationships, the degree of that compromise, I think tends to be, to maintain the sense of power exchange, tends to be the S-type coming over here and the D-type coming over here versus completely meeting in the middle. Now, I like the idea of meeting in the middle, but for most D-types, in order for them to get the psychological benefit they want out of being a D-type, they probably don't want to compromise that much. So, like, a sort of 80-20, 70-30 split is more likely than 50-50, or the D-type actually compromising more in the long term. Although, I think that might be different in scenarios where there's an existing vanilla relationship underlying that, and the other person comes out as an S-type, and the other partner kind of gets forced into, or maybe more charitably, gets to adopt the D-type role that they weren't expecting. They may be willing to do a lot more compromise there. But for lifestyle dominants that have had previous relationships, that want to be the D-type in their relationships, it's going to be less compromise on that end. So I am very much like, I like the control aspect has to start out at a lower level and really, really work up over time, because I guess I'm just picky. Like, I don't know if I'm jaded after seeing so much bullshit in the community after 7 years. Bandit is rolling on the floor like this for some reason. Hi, are you okay, dog? Are you okay? You an okay, puppy? We were just dancing around there for a minute. Sorry, I don't know if you guys, that her collar jingle can be really loud, so I feel like I have to warn people when she's like doing stuff, but I guess I'm just picky. I don't know. I whether that be my own experience or things I've seen in the community, or just like the fatigue of seeing people present themselves one way in public and act very differently behind closed doors, that tends to wear down on you after a while. And especially as I'm, now in my late 20s and I've had a very long amount of time, relatively speaking, experiencing adult relationships, like I just sort of expect more, and I'm more attuned to like, okay, this is what I want from a relationship and somebody I'm in a relationship with, and here's kind of the signals I can look at to sort of figure out if we are going to be compatible, because having compatible values in a DS relationship is the most important thing, and people do not talk about it. They think if their kinks are aligned, oh, we both really like blood play, we both love impact, we both really love super high protocol, we're going to be great together. Okay, then what do you both think about religion? What do you each think about living in a city versus living in a more rural area? What do you think about your dietary choices? Are you a vegan and they're like a really hardcore, super proud omnivore? How do you want to raise kids? Do you want to have kids? Those things, I think, are avoided in terms of having conversations around them, because people want to have this, like, they want to have the kink fantasy, and finding a kink partner can be hard. So the vanilla things that are important kind of get pushed to the wayside as long as the kink stuff is there. And you can't really do that. That's not really going to work out. If you want to have like a live-in 24/7, especially like monogamous DS relationship, those incompatibilities are going to become more and more and more apparent over time. So just think about that beforehand. Have those conversations, because you want to be able to know that ahead of time, so you don't waste each other's time, and you can spend that energy, instead of making one relationship work and trying so freaking hard and spending years trying to get something to work, just saying, hey, I don't think we're going to work out because I'm agnostic and you're a really devout Christian and you want to live in the woods somewhere and I love being in the city. Like, we're not going to work out. Have a nice day, move on. And that's, that's really something I think people should think about more in their relationship negotiations. But I keep going off into the weeds. This is why I script stuff, is because it's like there's so much interesting stuff I could talk about. I end up going way over here to this other thing, when really what I wanted to talk about right now was like here. So I hope you all like this chaotic mess of a video by the end of it. But the service and control thing, again, I'm trying to stay on track with this, is for me, that control has to be worked up over time, and the service is what I find really motivating. And there's this sort of like, I don't know if it's like a quadrant thing, if it's like, high control, high service, high control, low service. Like, I don't know how you would categorize this necessarily, but you can have service that has a high degree of control with it, and you can have service that has a low degree of control, like in the case between Raven Kaldera and his partner. The way that they talked about it is basically Raven wants to have sort of a hands-off approach. They want to have service. They want to have the things they want when they want it, but they don't want to have to fucking give 20 instructions about how to do it. And so Joshua had figured out, hey, I could ask definitely one, but no more than 3 clarifying questions about any given task before he would just say fuck it and do it himself. So they came up with a dynamic where there was that higher level of service but lower level of control, where Joshua was expected to more sort of be the master in his own realm of like doing the things that Raven wanted to do and knowing how Raven wanted things done ahead of time and having training before that to like establish it, not just like guessing at what was going to be the best thing to do. But they would work that out to where, if he said, make me dinner, like, he could just go and make dinner and wouldn't have to clarify, do you want pizza? Do you want pasta? Do you want hamburgers? Do you want to go out? Do you want, like, just get him dinner, okay? What does he normally like eating? What's in the fridge? Make something, and figure out what that is, right? And for other people, they want that higher level of control. They want to, and I've used this phrase before, they want to be micromanaged. They want to be like, okay, I need you to set the table for dinner. And in, maybe more my case or in Joshua's case, it would be, okay, set the dinner table. And it would just be done how it's done, right? It wouldn't be done flippantly in like a bratty way where it's like, all the glasses are upside down and all the plates are in the middle and there's no forks. Like, it would be done properly with the intention of actually executing on the order that was given. But it would be done with a level of discretion on the behalf of the submissive, as opposed to, I'm going to get out the ruler after you're done and I'm going to measure how far away the edge of the fork is from the table and from the plate, and the plate has to be here and all the cups have to be on this side of the table, and it needs to be this number of forks and this number of knives, and if you get anything wrong, there will be punishment. Again, some people love that. I have even heard a story of somebody where they specifically disqualified somebody from being their submissive because they couldn't set a table properly within their exact specifications after going back and forth about it several times. So, there is that sort of axis of difference in terms of how people want to have those things in their relationships. Okay, I've been filming for 30 minutes already. And so I'm going to cut myself off now because I think I could just keep going at this point. I'm going to rein it in and sort of put in my final thoughts here. So I want to invite all of you to have this conversation as an opportunity for introspection about your own desires. Because for me, again, this was a revelation. This was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not in a DS relationship right now, but when I'm ready for that and I'm talking about it again, communicating that I want to have that trust to be given orders, but kind of, allowed to sort of be more like the head housekeeper, where it's like, they know what needs to be done and they're going to do it. And as long as it's done, generally the way they want it to be done, the person that's the head of household is going to trust them to do it right. Like, that's more the relationship I want to have, where there's that trust and there's orders and authority, but it's not about like having this sort of like dominating presence while the service is being done. And for you, it might be about service and control. It might be about caregiving and emotionality and tenderness, whatever sort of thing you want to have in your relationship that really defines what feeds your submission. Try to figure out what that is and how that might be different, because so oftentimes these things are kind of glued together and paired together when they can actually be teased out and are done in different ways in different relationships. And high control versus low control versus high service, no service, high amounts of caregiving, like emotional distance and coldness, whatever that is, figuring out what that looks like for you personally, I think is so very important. So this was just like a really, really, really fun thing. I do recommend, if you guys, like me, enjoy Raven Kaldera's thoughts and opinions, I really recommend checking out some of their books. I can't really link to things because YouTube hates that and it will just flag it as violating the rules in terms of service, but I will let you know, like, the names of the books and other things, whatever I can get away with YouTube, I will put down there for you guys to check out, because they very, very much deserve to have their work, paid for and applauded. And this is really this was a little bit of what they talked about in the class, and mostly my own thoughts and opinions based off of what was talked about in that class / discussion group. So I am very much looking forward to whatever their next discussion group in a couple of weeks ends up being, because I had such a great time, and it's so amazing when you get to actually converse with people that have been really influential in your kink development, and just like hearing them speak and hearing their thoughts, like, oh man, always so worth it. I love kink education. It's so much fun. Anyways, I would love to know what you all think about this in a comment down below. I haven't done like a completely unscripted, totally ramble video in a very long time. I'm always going to do at least some scripted videos, but if you all really like this, maybe I will work in more completely unscripted videos more often, as much as I can, but yeah, I would love to know your thoughts and opinions down below. What do you think about this? Where do you fall on the control and service thing? Anything else I talked about in this video? Any other thoughts, questions you might want to share? I would love to hear everything down below in a comment. Now, if you did enjoy this, if you want to make sure to not miss out on any other conversations with me, you can go ahead and subscribe because I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you really enjoyed this, if you want to support what I do, the best you can do that is with Patreon. A link to that will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.